The apartment building in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood was exactly what I needed. Affordable, close to my new job, and far enough from my ex that I wouldn't accidentally run into him at our old coffee shop. I was 29 years old and starting over, again. My name is Jordan Matthews. I'm a high school English teacher. I like poetry and good coffee and people who say what they mean. I'm also recently single after a 3-year relationship that ended when I discovered my boyfriend Tyler had been cheating on me for 6 months with someone from his CrossFit gym. So here I was on a Saturday in June, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the building didn't have an elevator and I couldn't afford movers. My best friend Riley had promised to help but had texted an hour ago saying they had food poisoning, which I suspected was actually a hangover, but I let it slide. I was on my 4th trip up the stairs, carrying a box labeled kitchen stuff that was way heavier than it should have been when I ran into him. Literally ran into him. I turned the corner on the 3rd floor landing and walked directly into a wall of human. The box flew out of my hands. There was a crash, the sound of breaking glass. "Shit," I said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't see." I looked up and my brain short-circuited. The man I'd run into was tall, maybe 6'2", with broad shoulders and the kind of build that suggested he spent a lot of time in the gym. He had dark brown hair cut short, light brown eyes, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He was wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt that showed off muscular arms covered in tattoos. He was also holding my box, which he'd somehow caught before it hit the ground. "You okay?" he asked. His voice was deep and had a slight southern accent I couldn't quite place. "Yeah, I thank you for catching that." He set the box down carefully and crouched to examine the contents. "Looks like a couple mugs broke, everything else seems fine." Of course the mugs broke, those were my favorites. I crouched down next to him and started picking up the pieces of what had been 2 very nice ceramic mugs I'd bought at a craft fair last year. "Sorry about that," he said. "Not your fault, I should have been watching where I was going." "You moving in?" He gestured to the box. "Yeah, 3C just down the hall." "I'm 3B right next door." He stood up and offered me his hand. "Ethan Rivera." "Jordan Matthews?" I shook his hand. His grip was firm and warm and I held on maybe half a second too long before letting go. "Welcome to the building, Jordan. Let me help you with this." "You don't have to." "I want to, besides I broke your mugs, least I can do is carry a box." He picked up the kitchen box like it weighed nothing and started down the hall toward 3C. I followed, trying not to notice the way his shoulders moved under his t-shirt. "So what brings you to Capitol Hill?" Ethan asked as I unlocked my apartment door. "New start, new job, needed a change." "Running from something or running towards something?" I looked at him. That was a perceptive question, little bit of both. "I know that feeling." He set the box down in my empty kitchen. "You need help with the rest." "I couldn't ask you to." "You didn't ask, I offered." He was already heading back toward the door. "Come on, how many more boxes?" "Maybe 10. Let's get it done." For the next hour, Ethan helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs. He didn't complain once. He didn't ask invasive questions about why I was moving. He just worked steadily and efficiently, and by the time we finished I was sweaty and exhausted and also very aware that my new neighbor was one of the most attractive men I'd ever seen. "Thank you," I said when we'd carried up the last box. "Seriously, you saved me hours of work." "No problem, that's what neighbors are for." He pulled a card out of his pocket and handed it to me. "My number, if you need anything, someone to water your plants while you're away, someone to call if you hear weird noises in the walls, whatever, just text me." I looked at the card. It had his name and a phone number and nothing else. Very utilitarian. "You give all your new neighbors your number?" "Just the ones who seem like they might need a friend." He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him, and it transformed his whole face from stern to warm. "See you around, Jordan." After he left, I stood in my apartment surrounded by boxes and thought about the fact that my new neighbor was helpful and attractive, and had given me his number. I also thought about the fact that there was exactly zero indication he was interested in men, and I should probably not develop a crush on the straight guy next door because I'd literally just escaped one bad situation and didn't need to walk into another. I unpacked for 3 hours, took a shower, and ordered Thai food because I was too tired to cook. I was eating pad Thai directly from the container when there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Ethan standing there holding a six-pack of beer. "Figured you might need this after a long day of moving," he said, and I wanted to apologize again about the mugs. "You really don't need to apologize, but I'll take the beer." We sat on my floor. I didn't have furniture yet, most of my stuff was still in storage, and drank beer and talked. I learned that Ethan had been in the building for 2 years, that he was a police officer with Seattle PD, that he'd moved here from Texas 5 years ago. "What brought you to Seattle from Texas?" I asked. "Needed a fresh start. Seattle seemed like a good place to disappear and figure out who I was without everyone watching." "That's very philosophical for a cop." He smiled slightly. "Cops can be philosophical, we're people too." "Fair point. What do you do when you're not being philosophical and enforcing laws?" "Gym, reading. I volunteer at a youth center in South Seattle teaching kids boxing. Keeps me busy." He took a sip of his beer. "What about you? What does an English teacher do for fun?" "Read mostly. I go to poetry readings sometimes. I like hiking when I can get out of the city." I paused. "I'm also recently single and trying to figure out what I do for fun when I'm not defining myself by my relationship." "How recent?" 3 months, found out he was cheating, ended it, spent 2 months being sad, now I'm here trying to be less sad." "That's rough, I'm sorry." "It's fine, I mean it's not fine, but it will be fine eventually." I looked at him. "What about you, seeing anyone?" It was a fishing question and we both knew it, but I was curious, and maybe a little bit hopeful. "No, not for a while, I don't really date much." "Why not?" He was quiet for a moment and I watched him decide whether to tell me something. "Because I'm gay and I work in law enforcement, which isn't always the most accepting environment. And because I spent the first 28 years of my life in rural Texas where being gay was not an option. So I'm still figuring out how to do this, how to date, how to be open about who I am without it feeling like I'm putting on a performance." My heart did something complicated. "You're gay." "Yeah, is that okay?" "It's very okay, I'm gay too." He smiled that warm smile again. "I know." "How did you know?" "You have a rainbow flag in one of your boxes, saw it when I was helping you move." "Observant." "It's my job to notice things." He finished his beer and stood up. "I should let you get back to unpacking, but Jordan, I'm glad you moved in next door." "Me too." After he left, I sat on my floor surrounded by boxes and thought, well, this is either going to be really good or really complicated. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I fell into an easy friendship. We ran into each other in the hallway. We had coffee together on the building's roof deck on Sunday mornings. He helped me pick out furniture at IKEA and then spent an entire Saturday helping me assemble it while I tried not to stare at his arms. I learned that he took his coffee black and his eggs over easy, that he'd been a Marine before becoming a cop, that he had a younger sister in Austin he talked to every week, that he was terrible at cooking but excellent at fixing things. He'd already repaired my leaky faucet and the weird noise my refrigerator was making. He learned that I was obsessed with slam poetry and indie bookstores, that I stress-baked when I was anxious, that I'd wanted to be a writer but had gotten practical about career choices, that I was still processing the end of my relationship and sometimes got sad for no reason. We were friends, good friends, the kind of friends who texted each other random thoughts at midnight and shared meals and knew each other's schedules well enough to time our morning runs to coincide. We were also both very carefully not acknowledging the attraction that was obviously there. I knew I was attracted to him. That was unavoidable. Ethan was objectively attractive and also kind and funny in a dry, deadpan way that made me laugh. But I didn't know if the attraction was mutual or if he was just being a good neighbor and I was reading too much into things. Until one night in July when everything changed. I'd had a terrible day. One of my students had been caught with drugs at school and I'd had to call his parents and sit through a meeting with administration, and it had been emotionally exhausting. I came home and immediately started stress-baking cookies. Ethan knocked on my door around 8 p.m. "Smelled cookies," he said, "thought I'd investigate." "Bad day, needed to bake, come in." He came in and sat at my kitchen counter while I pulled a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies out of the oven. Want to talk about it? He asked. I told him about the student, about the meeting, about how helpless I felt watching a kid make choices that would probably derail his whole life. That's hard, Ethan said, especially when you care, which you obviously do. Sometimes I think I care too much. I take this stuff home with me, I lie awake thinking about these kids and whether I'm doing enough. That's not a bad thing, that's what makes you a good teacher. I handed him a cookie and he ate it in 2 bites and made an appreciative sound. These are incredible, he said. Thanks, stress baking is my superpower. We sat in my kitchen eating cookies and talking about hard days and impossible jobs and how we both dealt with caring too much about things we couldn't control. And at some point, the conversation shifted from professional to personal. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Always. Your ex, the one who cheated, do you miss him? Sometimes, not him exactly, but the idea of having someone, of not being alone, of having a person to come home to who cares about your day. I paused. Do you ever feel like that, lonely even when you're surrounded by people? All the time, he was looking at me with an intensity I hadn't seen before, especially lately. Why lately? Because I met someone I actually like, someone I could see myself with, but I don't know if they feel the same way and I'm too scared to ask. My heart was racing. Ethan. Jordan, can I be honest with you? Yes. I like you a lot. I've liked you since the day you moved in and ran into me on the stairs. I like the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I like that you care about your students. I like that you stress bake and share the results. I like being around you. I like being around you too. But I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to risk our friendship if you don't feel the same way, so I need to know, is there any chance you might feel the same way about me? I stood up and walked around the counter until I was standing in front of him. Ethan, I've been trying not to develop feelings for you since the day we met. It's not working. I like you too, a lot. He stood up slowly. We were very close now, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the small scar above his left eyebrow. Can I kiss you? He asked. Please. He kissed me and it was everything a first kiss should be, careful and sure at the same time, questioning and answering simultaneously. When we broke apart, we were both smiling. So Ethan said, this is happening. Yeah, I think it is. Good, because I've been thinking about doing that for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, why didn't you say something sooner? Because I'm an idiot who's bad at feelings. I kissed him again and we ended up on my couch, kissing until we were both breathless and smiling and tangled up in each other. I should go, Ethan said eventually. I have an early shift tomorrow. Okay. But Jordan, can I take you to dinner this week, like an actual date? I would love that. He kissed me one more time and then left, and I sat on my couch surrounded by cookie crumbs and thought about how sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them. We went on our first date 3 days later. Ethan took me to a small Italian place in Fremont and we talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his family in Texas, conservative, religious, not okay with him being gay, about coming out at 28 and losing most of his family except his sister, about moving to Seattle to build a life where he could be himself. I told him about my own coming out at 22, about parents who were supportive but confused, about building a chosen family of friends who got it, about Tyler and the cheating and how it had made me doubt my judgment. I get that, Ethan said. After my family rejected me, I didn't date for 2 years because I didn't trust myself to pick people who would actually stay. I thought, if my own family can't love me, how can I expect anyone else to? But you don't feel that way anymore. I'm working on not feeling that way. Therapy helps. You're in therapy. Yeah, Seattle PD requires it for officers, but I've kept going on my own because it actually helps. Turns out talking about your feelings is good for you. He smiled slightly. Who knew? After dinner, we walked through the neighborhood and ended up at a park overlooking the water. It was late summer and the sun was setting over the Olympics and the whole city was painted gold. This is nice, I said. Yeah, it is. Ethan, can I ask you something that might be too personal? You can ask me anything. What's it like being a gay cop? Do people give you trouble about it? He was quiet for a moment. It's complicated. Officially, the department is very pro-diversity. They have policies against discrimination, they celebrate pride, but unofficially there's still a lot of guys who aren't comfortable with it, who make jokes, who won't partner with me, who think I'm less capable because I'm gay. That's terrible. It is, but it's also getting better, slowly, and I have good people in my corner, my captain, some of my fellow officers who don't give a shit about who I date. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. He looked at me. Why do you ask? Because I want to understand your life, what it's like for you, what you deal with that I might not see. That's thank you, most people don't ask. We sat on a bench overlooking the water and Ethan put his arm around me and I leaned into him and thought about how different this felt from Tyler. How solid, how real. Jordan, Ethan said, I need to tell you something. Okay. I'm not good at relationships. I don't have a lot of experience with them because I spent most of my life closeted. So I'm probably going to mess up. I'm probably going to be bad at communicating or not know what I'm supposed to do or say the wrong thing, and I need you to know that going in I'm trying but I'm still learning. Ethan, I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest. Tell me when something's bothering you, tell me what you need. Don't shut me out because you think you're supposed to have it all figured out. I can do that. Good, because I'm not perfect either. I'm probably going to be oversensitive sometimes because of what happened with Tyler. I'm probably going to need reassurance more than is reasonable, and I need you to be patient with me while I work through that. I can do that too. We kissed there on the bench while the sun set over Seattle, and I thought about how sometimes the right relationship is just two imperfect people being honest about their imperfections. We took it slow, which meant we dated for 6 weeks before Ethan stayed over at my place for the first time. It wasn't that we weren't attracted to each other, we were, very much so, but we both wanted to build something solid, something that wasn't just physical, something that could last. So we went on dates. We cooked dinner together, which mostly meant I cooked and Ethan watched and occasionally stirred things. We watched movies on my couch. We went hiking in the Cascades. We introduced each other to our friends. Riley loved Ethan immediately. He's hot, he's employed, he's nice to you, and he has a job where he's legally required to be in good shape, Riley said after meeting him. Jordan, you better not mess this up. What if he messes it up? He won't. He looks at you like you're the best thing he's ever seen. Trust me, this one's good. I met some of Ethan's friends from the department, officers who'd become his chosen family after his biological family had rejected him. They were protective of him in a way that was both sweet and slightly intimidating. You hurt him and will know, one of them, a tall black woman named Detective Sarah Wilson, told me while Ethan was getting drinks. He's had a hard enough time, he deserves someone who treats him right. I plan to. Good, because he's falling for you hard and I'd hate to have to arrest you for breaking his heart. She said it with a smile, but I knew she meant it. The first night Ethan stayed over was in late August. We'd been dating for 2 months and we'd been taking things slow, but that night felt different. We'd had dinner at his place and were watching a movie and kissing on his couch, and at some point I said, "Do you want to stay at my place tonight?" "Yeah," he said, "I do." We walked the 10 feet from his apartment to mine, the convenience of being neighbors, and we fell into my bed fully clothed and we kissed until we were both breathless, and then we just lay there holding each other. "Is this okay?" Ethan asked. "This is perfect." We made love that night, slow and careful and full of checking in with each other, and afterward we lay tangled together and Ethan said, "I'm falling in love with you." "I'm falling in love with you too." Is that too fast? We've only been dating for 2 months. I don't think there's a right timeline for these things, I just know how I feel. How do you feel? Like I found something I didn't know I was looking for. Our first fight happened 3 months into the relationship. Ethan had been working a lot long shifts, overtime, cases that followed him home. He was tired and stressed and starting to pull away emotionally. He'd cancel plans at the last minute. He'd be physically present but mentally elsewhere. He stopped talking to me about his day. I recognized the pattern. Tyler had done the same thing before I'd found out he was cheating. The pulling away, the cancellations, the emotional distance. I told myself Ethan wasn't Tyler, that he was just busy, that I was being paranoid. but the fear was there, sitting in my chest, growing. One Friday night he canceled our dinner plans for the third time in 2 weeks. Said he had to work late on a case. I said it was fine. It wasn't fine. He showed up at my door at 11 p.m. looking exhausted. "I'm sorry about tonight," he said. "The case, it's complicated and I couldn't leave." "It's fine. Jordan, you're upset." I said it's fine. "No, you said the words it's fine, but your face says you're pissed. Talk to me. You've canceled on me 3 times in 2 weeks. You barely talk to me anymore. You're always tired or working or, I don't know, somewhere else." "I told you I've been busy." "I know, but I need more than that. I need you to actually talk to me about what's going on instead of just shutting me out." "I'm not shutting you out. I'm dealing with a difficult case and I'm tired and I don't have the energy to." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what you want from me. I want you to tell me when you're struggling instead of just pulling away. I want to feel like we're partners instead of like I'm just waiting around for you to have time for me. That's not fair. You knew my job was demanding when we started dating." "This isn't about your job. This is about you not communicating with me, about me feeling like I'm back in my last relationship where I was always the one trying and the other person was always pulling away, and I can't." My voice broke. "I can't do that again, Ethan." He looked at me and his expression shifted from defensive to understanding. "This is about Tyler." "What?" "You're scared I'm going to cheat on you or leave you or hurt you the way he did. So when I pull away because I'm tired or stressed, you read it as me checking out of the relationship." "That's not," I stopped. "Okay, maybe that's part of it, but Ethan, you have been pulling away. That's not just me being paranoid." He sat down on my couch and put his head in his hands. "You're right, I have been pulling away and I'm sorry. I do that. When things get stressful, I retreat. I shut people out. It's a pattern I learned when I was closeted and dealing with my family's expectations. I just disappear inside myself because it's safer than being vulnerable." I sat down next to him. "I need you to not do that with me. I need you to tell me when you're stressed or overwhelmed or whatever, even if you don't want to talk about the details of your work. Just let me in." "I can do that. I want to do that. But I need you to tell me when you're spiraling about Tyler instead of just assuming I'm going to hurt you. Give me a chance to reassure you instead of just sitting with the fear." "Okay, I can do that too." We sat there for a moment in my living room at 11 p.m. and I thought about how this was what healthy relationships were supposed to look like: fighting fairly, being honest, actually resolving things instead of just letting them fester. "I love you," Ethan said. "I love you too. I'm sorry I've been distant. The case I'm working on, it involves a kid, and it's hard. Seeing what some kids go through, it gets to me. Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really, but I want you to know why I've been off. And I want you to know that it's not about you or us. It's about me processing some heavy shit and not knowing how to do it well." "Thank you for telling me that." We held each other on my couch and I felt something shift, a deepening of trust, a strengthening of the foundation we were building. "Stay tonight," I said. "Okay." 6 months into our relationship, Ethan asked if I wanted to go to Texas with him for Thanksgiving. "Are you sure?" I asked. "You said your family wasn't okay with you being gay." "They're not, but my sister Emily is getting married and I want to be there, and I want you there with me, if you're willing." "Won't that be complicated?" "Extremely, but I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending I don't have a whole life they know nothing about, and I want them to meet the person I love, even if they're not ready to accept it." We flew to Austin the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Emily picked us up from the airport and immediately hugged Ethan and then turned to me. "You must be Jordan. I've heard so much about you." She shook my hand warmly. "Thank you for coming, and I'm sorry in advance for whatever my parents say." "That bad?" "Let's just say they're trying, but their version of trying is still pretty terrible." Ethan's parents lived in a suburb outside Austin in a house that looked like every other house on the street, beige with a manicured lawn and a flag. His mom answered the door. "Ethan," she hugged him stiffly, "you look well." "Thanks, Mom. This is Jordan, my boyfriend." I watched her face do something complicated, a flash of discomfort, a forced smile. "Hello, Jordan, welcome." Thanksgiving dinner was exactly as awkward as I'd expected. Ethan's dad barely acknowledged me. His mom was overly polite in a way that felt like walking on eggshells. His younger brother made a few pointed comments about lifestyle choices. But Emily was great. She asked me about teaching, about Seattle, about how I'd met Ethan. She went out of her way to make me feel included, and I watched Ethan navigate his family with a quiet dignity that made me love him even more. That night, lying in the guest room, separate beds because his parents had made it very clear that we don't condone that under their roof, Ethan said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought you here. Don't apologize, I wanted to come. They're terrible. They're struggling with something they don't understand. That doesn't make it okay, but I can see they love you even if they don't know how to show it right now. You're more charitable than I am. I'm also not their kid, it's easier for me to have perspective." I reached across the gap between our beds and took his hand. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You didn't hide who you were, you introduced me as your boyfriend, you stood up for us, that took courage." "I love you," he said. "I love you too." The next morning at breakfast, Ethan's mom pulled me aside while he was outside with his dad. "Jordan," she said, "I need to say something." "Okay. I don't understand this, any of this, the way Ethan lives, what he is. It goes against everything I believe, everything I was taught." I stayed quiet, waiting. "But," she continued, "I can see that he loves you, and I can see that you love him, and I can see that he's happy in a way he never was before, so I'm trying. I don't know if I'll ever understand it, but I'm trying." "That's all we can ask," I said. "Take care of him, he's been hurt enough." "I will, I promise." We'd been together for a year when I started thinking about forever. I knew I wanted to marry Ethan, I knew I wanted to build a life with him, but I didn't know if he was ready for that conversation. We were living together now. I'd officially moved into his apartment because it was bigger and better located. We'd fallen into domestic routines. We cooked together, we cleaned together, we argued about whose turn it was to do laundry. We were building a life. But we hadn't talked about marriage. I brought it up one Sunday morning over coffee. "Ethan, can we talk about the future?" "That sounds ominous." "It's not. I want to know where you see this going, us, I mean." He set down his coffee. "Where do I see us going?" "Yeah, like, are we building towards something, or are we just taking it day by day?" "Do you want to be building towards something?" "I do. I want to marry you someday. I want us to be husbands. I want to know that this isn't just temporary." He smiled. "Jordan, I bought a ring 3 months ago." "What?" "I bought a ring. I've been trying to figure out the right time to propose. I didn't want to rush you or pressure you, but yeah, I want to marry you too." "You have a ring?" "I have a ring. Can I see it?" He got up and went to the bedroom and came back with a small box. Inside was a simple silver band with a small diamond. "It's perfect," I said. "So is that a yes? If I were to ask you to marry me, would you say yes?" "Are you asking, Jordan Matthews, will you marry me?" "Yes, absolutely yes." He kissed me and we ended up on the living room floor laughing and crying and planning a future we'd both been too scared to name until now. We got married 6 months later in May on a rooftop in Capitol Hill with the Seattle skyline as our backdrop. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family. My parents came and cried. Ethan's sister Emily came. His parents didn't. That hurt him, I could see it, but he didn't let it ruin the day. Riley was my best person. Sarah Wilson was Ethan's. We wrote our own vows. I promised to love him on the hard days and the easy ones, to be patient when he retreated into himself and to always pull him back out, to support his career even when it meant late nights and canceled plans, to build a life with him that was honest and real and ours. He promised to communicate better, to let me in even when it was hard, to trust that I wasn't going to leave, to love me fiercely and openly in a way he'd never been allowed to love before. When we kissed, everyone cheered, and I looked at this man I'd literally run into on a staircase a year and a half ago and thought about how sometimes the best things in life come from accidents. At the reception, Emily pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For loving my brother, for giving him a reason to stand up to our parents, for making him happy." "He makes me happy too." "I know, I can see it." She paused. Mom and Dad will come around eventually. It might take years, but they will. I'll make sure of it. Thank you. Ethan found me later, after the cake had been cut and the dancing had started. Happy, he asked. Extremely, you. More than I thought possible. He pulled me close. Thank you for taking a chance on the cop next door. Thank you for being worth the chance. We danced on that rooftop in Seattle while our friends celebrated around us, and I thought about how a year and a half ago I'd been moving into a new apartment trying to escape my past, and instead I'd found my future. 5 years into marriage, we bought a house. It was a small craftsman in Ballard with a yard big enough for the dog we'd adopted, a rescue named Scout who'd attached herself to Ethan immediately, and enough bedrooms that we could host friends and family. Ethan had made detective, I'd been promoted to department head at my school, we'd built careers and a life and a home together. His parents still hadn't fully come around, but they were trying. They sent Christmas cards now, they called on birthdays. His mom had even sent a gift when we'd bought the house, a set of kitchen towels with a note that said congratulations on your new home. It wasn't acceptance, not fully, but it was progress. My parents loved Ethan. They'd adopted him as their own son, invited him to family dinners, called him to ask for advice on things. He'd become part of our family in a way that made my heart full. One Saturday morning in our new house, Ethan woke me up early. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing, I want to show you something. He led me out to the backyard where he'd set up a small table with coffee and pastries and flowers. What's this? It's our anniversary, 5 years since we got married, 6.5 since you moved in next door. I wanted to do something special. We sat in our backyard drinking coffee and eating pastries, and Scout lay at our feet, and Ethan said, I've been thinking. About what? About how lucky I am, how easily this could have not happened if you'd moved into a different building, if I hadn't been home that day, if either of us had been too scared to take a chance. But we did take a chance. We did, and it was the best decision I ever made. He reached across the table and took my hand. Jordan, I love you. I love the life we've built. I love waking up next to you. I love arguing with you about whose turn it is to walk the dog. I love all of it. I love you too. I want to have a family with you, kids, however we do it, adoption, fostering, whatever. I want to build that with you. I felt tears in my eyes. I want that too. Yes. Yeah. We started the adoption process 6 months later. It was long and complicated and emotionally exhausting and worth every second. 2 years after that conversation in our backyard, we brought home our daughter. Her name was Maya. She was 4 years old. She'd been in the foster system for 2 years. She was shy and scared and had every reason not to trust adults. But slowly, patiently, we showed her that she was safe, that she was loved, that she had a home. The first time she called Ethan Dad, he cried. The first time she called me Papa, I cried too. We were a family, unconventional maybe, built from adoption and choice rather than biology, but real, ours. 10 years after I'd moved into that apartment building in Capitol Hill, we were sitting on our porch watching Maya play in the yard with Scout, who was old and gray now but still devoted to Ethan. Remember when we met, I said. You ran into me carrying a box of kitchen stuff, broke your favorite mugs. You caught the box, you helped me move, you gave me your number. Best investment I ever made. He pulled me closer. You know what I was thinking that day? What? That you were the most beautiful person I'd ever seen, and that I had no idea how to talk to you, and that I was probably going to mess it up. You didn't mess it up. No, somehow I didn't. Maya ran over to us. Dad, Scout found a frog, come see. We got up and went to examine the frog Scout had discovered, and I thought about how my life had unfolded in ways I never could have predicted. I'd moved to Seattle to escape a bad relationship. I'd found an apartment in Capitol Hill. I'd run into a cop on the stairs. And that cop had become my neighbor, my friend, my boyfriend, my husband, my co-parent, my partner in building a life I'd never imagined was possible. Sometimes the best things in life start with accidents. Sometimes they start with a stranger helping you carry boxes. Sometimes they start with taking a chance on someone who seems different from what you thought you wanted but turns out to be exactly what you needed. Ethan Rivera had been all of those things, and more. He'd been the person who taught me to trust again, to love again, to believe that happy endings were possible. And here we were, 10 years later, still together, still building, still choosing each other every day. That night, after Maya was in bed and Scout was asleep on her dog bed, Ethan and I sat on our couch in the living room of our house in Ballard. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I ever thought possible," I said. "You?" "Same, every day with you is better than I imagined life could be." We kissed, and it felt exactly like our first kiss had felt 10 years ago in my apartment over stress-baked cookies, full of promise and possibility and the quiet certainty that we'd found something worth keeping. Sometimes love is a cop next door who helps you carry boxes and ends up carrying your heart. Sometimes it's just two broken people learning to be whole together. That's what we did. That's what we keep doing. Every single day.